All right, let's get going. So hello and welcome. I am Chris Newport. I am the lead dietitian and exercise physiologist and head coach here at the Endurance Edge. And today we're going to be talking about some supplementation. So nitric oxide boosters, do they actually work? All right. So, and if you guys have questions at any point throughout this webinar, stick them in the chat box or in the Q&A. I will do my best to get to them at regular intervals. But first, while I'm going to jump into the objectives, next, put in the chat box if you've ever tried a nitric oxide booster, or whether this is something that's just of curiosity to you that you may want to try, or if this is something that you've experimented with before. So while you guys are entering some information into the chat box or the Q&A, make sure that you share the chat box to everyone. That way everybody can see what you're writing. Let's jump into the objectives. All right, so what are we gonna learn? We're actually gonna define it. So what the heck is nitric oxide and explore its role in the body? So what does it actually do? We're going to talk about some health benefits, because you would actually be surprised, perhaps, to know that NO boosters are commonly used for certain populations with certain diseases, okay? And again, same thing, health benefits of nitric oxide and how it actually works, and then the roles of different supplementations for athletes. Obviously, I'm assuming most of you guys out there are some level of athlete, so should this be something that we're doing? And again, supplementation oftentimes goes with some level of side effects, so we're going to talk about those too. All right, so, and then how we can supplement naturally, so that's going to be big. Okay, so what is this? What is nitric oxide anyway? So NO, a nice acronym for nitric oxide. It's a signaling molecule. It exists as a gas and acts as a biological messenger. That's kind of a mouthful, and I'm going to have a cool a chart that you guys are going to be able to see here shortly. But L-arginine, it is an amino acid. Anybody heard of that one? It's catalyzed to nitric oxide through nitric oxide synthase. Again, do we feel like we're back in biology again? All right, so this is an endogenous pathway, so it happens inside the body. NO, nitric oxide, is a vasodilator. So why is that important? So people who might have high blood pressure, for example, we'll get to that later, but it actually widens the blood vessels. So you'll see why that's important as well from an athletic perspective too. So you're able to actually deliver that oxygen to working muscles, hypothetically, faster, okay? And it's found in fruits and vegetables. Hooray, right? So it ends up in our foods through the nitrate cycle, and I'm going to show you a graph about that too, actually how that happens. So here's this nitric oxide synthase. Again, don't you feel like you're back in biology again? So there's that nitric oxide. Here's arginine over here, and then all of these various pathways. Citrulline, that's going to be important a little bit later on as we talk about certain supplements. Getting through to that nitric oxide pathway. So there have been certain supplements that have experimented with just arginine, with arginine citrulline combinations, and then with natural products that you guys have likely heard of, you know, beet juice, in order to get through that pathway as well. So how does nitrate actually get into our food? So good question. So we actually have atmospheric nitrogen. Any gardeners out there? You guys probably know this pathway. And I'm not going to dwell on this a whole lot, but basically letting you know that this is through the process of having good quality soil. Now, of course, all of us could argue that the quality of the soil is definitely declining, and I would not necessarily argue with that. So this would be an important option in terms of, are you going to choose organic or not? Perhaps there's a little bit more care put into the soil with that piece, but just so that you're aware of how nitrogen actually gets into the plant and then into our bodies through food. Okay, so what other things, other than, as you might know, see them circled, red beets and beet leaves in terms of the sources of dietary nitrates. So take a little bit to kind of digest this, and yes, I do love some food puns. But looking at the nitrate concentrations, you may not know what rucola is, but there's a high concentration of that. Coriander, that is the seed of cilantro. We got some basil, some amaranth, lots of different lettuces. Notice how they're in a lot of leaves, beet leaves, chard, curled lettuce, endive, another lettuce. So if you are eating these things as food, you're going to naturally get more of these. And then, of course, you're naturally going to get other things like potassium that helps from a athletic performance perspective and a heart and muscle function and a general muscle function perspective. And then in the middle, you can see some other fruits and vegetables that are high in nitrates as well, and then some lower ones as well. So you're most likely going to hear about nitrates through beets. All right. So what are some of those health benefits? So interestingly, it's best known for treating erectile dysfunction. So you may have seen that, or may not have seen that as it relates to that, because think of dilating blood vessels, right? We want blood flow. So that's one of the purported benefits. And of course, lowering blood pressure. That's a huge thing as it relates to at least the American population having such high rates of hypertension. But even in athletes, we need to be aware of that. We need to be conscientious of that and taking note of our blood pressure. So again, vasodilators are huge as it relates to blood pressure. And interestingly, there is some literature that points to helping manage type 2 diabetes. So blood sugar management. And of course, more research as it is definitely needed for this type of thing. Okay, so here's the fun stuff. Athletes. Does it actually work? What is it actually used for? So supplements oftentimes contain nitrate, or like I said, arginine alone, citrulline alone, or combinations thereof. We have seen in some of the literature that it is improving performance in cyclists, runners, and swimmers. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. We see it most commonly benefiting a lot of athletes who are not necessarily elites. It's fairly easy to study elite athletes. And oftentimes we're not necessarily seeing a benefit there. So, you know, we've got kind of, we definitely need some more research. Okay, so arginine is not yet to be proven effective at increasing nitric oxide alone. There's some interesting stuff that they're doing to arginine, however. Citrulline malate, which is probably one of the most common types that you're going to see, it increases nitric oxide production, may also decrease muscle soreness. So perhaps one of those to add to the mix. And I'll tell you how you find these or get these a little bit later, and I can also send some information to you guys as well. So maybe helping and clearing those waste products associated with muscle fatigue, like ammonia, like lactate, which we generally should clear pretty quickly if we're in the training process. But, you know, sometimes it's nice to have a little extra help. But of course, more research is needed. We've actually seen a lot of the research initially being directed at endurance performance, but now we're finding, at least the researchers are shifting gears a little bit and seeing maybe it's more beneficial for other athletes, other populations, like more strength and power based athletes, because I know I've not really hit the nail on the head quite yet, but it's one of these that either doesn't provide a benefit or could potentially provide a benefit. It's not necessarily going to make you worse, but is it worth it? So that's always the questions that you should be asking when it comes to supplements. So here's some examples. I don't have any ties or connections to any of these particular companies. It's just kind of some of the things that are on the market right now. Let me point your attention up to this one up here. The nitrics or nitrics are, you know, generally scary labels that they try to show you. But notice this piece right here. They're saying proprietary blend. Anytime that they're saying proprietary blend, they're not actually fully disclosing what is actually in it. And oftentimes in the literature, you're going to see more specifically what is being tested. Now, that's not to say that this particular product or other products with proprietary blends have not been studied in the research. They have. But I am always skeptical when somebody says proprietary blend, because how much? You've got 3.6 grams of this proprietary blend, and they list L-citrulline as the first one, but is it in equal parts to all of these? Did you put a lot of citrulline in there? Did you put a little citrulline in there? I don't know. Other pieces that they're putting in here too, pomegranate fruit, so very high in antioxidants, so not necessarily a bad thing. Same with grapeseed extract. And other, we've got resveratrol down here, some black pepper extract, which is, good for helping turmeric or curcumin absorption. And then, drum roll, we've got creatine in here, which we know creatine very, very, very well as it relates to being a supplement that has had success. So who's the winner here? You may also see some nitric oxide supplements that combine it with caffeine. So again, what's working? Is it the caffeine? Is it the nitric oxide? I'll hold up a couple here that I've got. This one is called, it's called Pure Clean Performance. It's 100% organic beetroot powder. So do the powders work better than the liquids or the drinks? We're going to talk about that here in a second. Got another one that actually combines tart cherry with that. And here's another one, Beet Elite. Maybe some of you guys have heard of this guy. And then I've got one that I use through our professional online dispensary. It's called Vasofill. So, and that's a combination arginine and citrulline. So of any of these particular products, that's the one that I would trust the most. And I can tell you where to get that or how to get that. But these are some different options in terms of supplements. So best stored refrigerated. So I'm a little skeptical of the cans of beetroot juice or nitric oxide options that you have just sitting on the grocery store shelf. The longer it has exposure to the inside of the can, to light, to heat, to all of these other things, the more it's going to break down and the less it's going to actually deliver its proposed benefit. So honestly, one of your best bets, if you're going to try nitric oxide supplementation or try something like this, get yourself a juicer and try it out yourself. You can juice beets and you can juice the leaves too. I'm not going to tell you whether it's going to be particularly delicious because it's beets. But that's totally up to you. It's not me taking it, it's you taking it. So, but you've got beet juice. And then of course there's some liquid arginine products out there. I would be more trustworthy of a food product like beet juice than I would be of a supplement product just because of the way that they're regulated. Best at room temperature, so getting it out of the fridge, not storing it for excess amount of times. I just showed you a couple of different powdered supplements. So do they work better than the actual fruit and vegetable? Do they work better than the stuff in the can? That's a good question. And I my initial thinking would be likely not. But again, is it going to hurt? No, not necessarily. And I'll check questions here shortly. Timing, when you actually take this stuff. All right, so it should hypothetically be taken or ideally be taken somewhere around 30 to 60 minutes before a workout, which is a good thing because you're actually taking in some liquid. If you're using, whether it be juiced beets or whether it be like a beet concentrate or whether it be a powdered form, hopefully you're getting in some fluid as well. So that's going to benefit performance too, making sure that you're well hydrated. So, however, again, it's inconclusive. Does it work? Maybe. Does it not work? Maybe. But again, it's likely not going to necessarily hurt your performance. So I would definitely encourage you to experiment if you've not before. Although I'd probably go the caffeine route first, but it just depends on how heavily you sweat and those kinds of things. So there's things to consider here too. But then again, we've got supplements that exist as L-arginine and L-citrulline. So like I said, my preferred supplement is called Vasofill. It's an integrative therapeutics product. So that is it tastes pretty good. And, so that's obviously part of the piece. If you're not motivated to take a particular drink, food, supplement, or whatever, then how compliant are you going to be and how much is it going to benefit you? So again, these compounds eventually, remember that graph that I showed you guys, they're going to benefit, they're going to turn into that nitric oxide. Okay, so again, not everybody needs these supplements, and of course, individual needs will vary. At the end of the day, it's all about eating your fruits and vegetables, you guys. So, and hopefully you're changing it up. And do you remember how many leafy greens and lettuces that you saw on the high in nitric oxide? So you guys better be eating your leafy greens. That really is one of your best performance options aside from spending all this money on supplements. Eat your fruits and vegetables. So increasing nitric oxide naturally. Again, what did I just say? Eat your vegetables, guys. Come on. Beets are high, celery are high, spinach, arugula. Again, you've got all of those leafies. Getting in those foods that are high in antioxidants because they increase the stability of that nitric oxide. This is an interesting one. Limit your mouthwash and your tongue scraping. So think of your habit if you were to use this like before a race or before an event. Are you brushing your teeth and you like brushing your tongue or using a tongue scraper or doing your mouthwash and then going to have your drink or have your breakfast or whatever the case may be? Interestingly, mouthwash and tongue scraping and scraping with a toothbrush kills some of the bacteria that's in the back of your tongue that's beneficial for this whole nitric oxide production piece. And some people actually have more of that particular bacteria in their mouths than others, which means it's likely to not work so well for somebody who doesn't have that. So that was kind of an interesting new revelation if you're using a beetroot. Okay, can you have too much nitric oxide? So they're generally safe. Again, most of the time they're from fruits and vegetables, but again, if it's arginine and citrulline or some combination product like the one that I had showed you before, it's got proprietary blends, I would be far more skeptical of anything that says proprietary blend and has multiple other things in it. In particular, if it's in a capsule that is colored. So in other words, if you're taking a pill version of something like this, if it's not a clear capsule or if you can't break it easily and you don't know what's under the surface of that, I would be highly, highly skeptical. I have heard of people having severe allergic reactions to things like that, to products like that. So be skeptical, be, honor thy shrine. You guys are far more worth it than some random product that came off of the shelf and that may or may not benefit you, right? Okay, some of the potential side effects, stomach aches. It's what happens when you drink a big old glass full of beetroot juice, potentially. You might have some diarrhea. And this is the biggest one that generally freaks most people out, is that you will likely have pink or red stool or urine. So where that can potentially be a very big issue is if you are doing ultra marathons or anything ultra, 24-hour, 12-hour cycling events, running events, that kind of thing. You don't want to mistake that for blood. To say, oh, I just had beets this morning, and you actually have blood in your urine or blood in your stool, because that can be it can be indicative of a bigger issue. And definitely more is better is not the case here. Yes, we want you to eat your fruits and vegetables, but this doesn't mean that you're downing gallons of beetroot juice. And just from a side note, in terms of beetroot juice, you generally want to take what we've seen in the literature is oftentimes somewhere around 500 milliliters. So that's almost about 2 cups. So, I mean, it's still a lot. It's definitely not a little. If you're on a certain type of blood pressure medication, you definitely need to speak with your doctor or your physician first before taking anything. So you want to be monitoring for some potentially not good or low blood pressure issues there. Okay, so in summary, nitric oxide occurs naturally in the body. We get it from fruits and vegetables, which of course gets it from the soil. Supplementation for athletes for you, jury's kind of still out. We've seen some positive research. We've seen some very neutral research. You know, so we're still not, at least I'm still not fully sold on it. And then increasing nitric oxide naturally by, of course, increasing those fruits and vegetables and high foods and antioxidants is always a good idea. Side effects are generally mild, but again, I would not advise you doing this before a very important race or event. You know, try this in training, just like you try everything else, just like you don't take a new pair of shoes out for a marathon race. You know, test this out in your training first. Okay, so let's get up to some of our questions. I can't wait to see what you guys got. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, I've kind of figured alt red would come up. So alt red is a particular capsule. I was looking that up yesterday. It's got what are called betaines in it, which is basically trying to, you know, be these naturally occurring compounds. So, and then the other ingredients that are in that, Beat-Elite looks like some people have tried things like Beat-Elite. Okay, Jason tried it for weightlifting, but never really used it for endurance. And then again, pro-con of stacking an NO supplement together with a creatine supplement. So I think I showed that one before. So the way that let's address one thing at a time. So stacking particular supplements. So again, what is the purpose of the NO booster? It is a vasodilator. So think of that in relation to what you're trying to accomplish. So I'm about to go do a half Ironman. I'm about to do a half marathon or a marathon or whatever the case may be. And full disclosure, there's a video of me doing a VO2 max test. I took my citrulline arginine before doing that test to see if I could boost a little bit higher. But did it work? Good question. I don't know, because I haven't actually tested that without having taken it. That would have been the smart way to do that experiment. But you guys, the placebo effect is a huge effect. If this is something, and that kind of makes me think of alt red. If you're taking that pill 30 minutes to an hour before doing an endurance workout or an endurance event, and you feel like that's a good habit for you to be in, and it's a relatively cheap thing and you're not hurting anything, do it. Again, is it working? I don't know. Is it not working? It's probably neutral, but again, it's the placebo effect. So there's a lot of different products on the market. So again, try them out for yourself. Try to be consistent with it. You can't say miraculously that all of a sudden you ran so much faster just from one supplement, unless it's something like caffeine, which you'll find a very marked difference. And that's a whole nother supplement video. And then again, stacking supplements, I would put your creatine at the back end of your workout in combination with protein and carbs in order to be able to maintain the lean mass through a workout, and use the NO supplement beforehand. So that would be the way that I would work it, just thinking of what we've seen in the literature. So, all right. So any other questions? Let's hear them, you guys. And if not, then hopefully we'll be able to wrap it up here. So again, just one more time, let's, if I can, go back to our summary. Eat your fruits and vegetables, you guys. That's number one key important thing there. If you want to try beetroots or nitric oxide boosters, again, get a good reputable brand. If you don't know of a reputable brand or you need ideas, just email me, let me know. I'm happy to give you some suggestions, because supplements are not well regulated. You don't know where these are being processed. You don't know what other things, again, are in it with proprietary blends. So just be cautious with your supplementation, and then try it out, experiment. Because does it actually work? Good question. We're happy to test you in the lab here if you want to do an experiment with it and then do a washout period and then do an experiment without it. Do you actually get a boost in VO2? good question. Do you actually go faster? I don't know. But again, the placebo effect is a real effect. So if this is something that you are used to taking and you like taking it, then keep it up. As long as it's not hurting you, then, go for it. So if you guys have any other questions, check us out at theenduranceedge.com or thefuelingedge.com. That is our custom portion meal service for athletes. And again, I am Coach Chris, and thank you guys for coming.